Here you go, Dave. You want somebody hold it for you?
If you'd like to.
I'm glad to hold it for you. So you can see it.
So I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank my colleagues for joining us here. This is, from my standpoint, pretty simple, pretty basic. I view, both Senator Scott and I come from the private sector in business, and we're just used to having financial information and having a pretty disciplined process of reviewing it. Certainly before we agree to budgets in our business. The analogy would be that we as 535 members of Congress, we literally are the board of directors of the largest financial entity in the world, and we never talk numbers. I mean, you've got the number here, so it's not a fair question to ask, but I've been asking colleagues, I've been asking reporters, do you know how much the federal government spent last year? And most people I asked look pretty flummoxed. And I said, don't feel bad, it's not your fault. It's because we never talk about it. And so what I've done is I've just prepared this chart that just gives you some basic information. One number I want to point out is the $4.4 trillion. That's what we were spending totally, mandatory and discretionary spending in 2019 before the pandemic hit. Now again, we recognize we had a pandemic, and Congress spent all kinds of money. In total, is about $6.4 trillion over 3 years more than the baseline of 2019 spending, 6.4. One of the things that surprised me as I put this chart together, breaking out discretionary versus mandatory spending, is I would have thought all that temporary COVID relief spending would have been discretionary. Once the crisis, once the pandemic passed, that spending would have just gone away. But in fact, only $1 trillion of the $6.4 trillion was allocated to discretionary, and $5.4 trillion was put into mandatory. I don't understand that. I'm not sure anybody understands that other than a few budget experts somewhere in the administration or maybe in the appropriations committees. I was shocked by that. The other thing I find pretty shocking, again, we really don't know, what the negotiators are negotiating from a standpoint of discretionary spending. That's what, the omnibus or NECR is just talking about there. But we do know from the latest Treasury report from 2013 that in total, they're estimating 2023 spending will be $6 trillion. So you look at $6 trillion versus 4.4 in just that 4-year time period. Have we literally just increased the baseline spending from 4.4 to $6 trillion, another a $1.6 trillion increase, about 36% increase? I mean, if that's the case, we'll never balance the budget. I'll throw out two more. I know this is a lot of numbers, but let me just throw a couple more out. Had we just grown the 4.4 by a factor of population growth plus inflation, that number should be about $4.8 trillion, okay? Last year, the federal government raised in revenue $4.9 trillion. Isn't that kind of tantalizing from a standpoint that if we exhibited some financial discipline here, that we actually could have in sight a balanced budget? So we wouldn't keep growing our debt where all this deficit spending wouldn't continue to fuel inflation? One more little factoid to throw out there. Because of inflation, a dollar you all held at the start of the Biden administration is worth less than 88 cents today. We're talking about defense spending. Somewhere we've been told, haven't seen it in writing, but we've been told about $858 billion worth of defense spending. That's only worth about $750 billion from the start of the Biden administration because of inflation. We're mortgaging our kids' future. This is killing us from a financial standpoint. It's got to stop. This process has to stop, which is why I supported Senator Lee's unanimous consent request yesterday to pass a CR. As much as we all hate CRs, the dysfunction they represent, but pass a CR that gets us into next year, not only to give a Republican House an opportunity to respond to the people that put them in place, but also to give us time to start understanding what these numbers actually mean. And so with that, I'd like to, introduce Senator Lee, who offered that CR request yesterday.